Welcome to the Bad Boss Brief. I am Stephanie Peirolo.
And I'm Eugene S.
And we are at episode 65. And today we are going to talk about annual reviews.
Oh, God.
Do we keep them or kill them? So this is the annual review, keep or kill. What do you think, Eugene?
You know what? It makes a lot of people happy. And I don't want to be a joy kill like I usually am. But and I understand the need for them, but I absolutely hated them. And I remember at Adobe telling my boss, I'll tell you what, you can keep my $5,000 raise if I don't have to do this paperwork. And she's like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but you understand part of my raise, which is not $5,000, but considerably more, comes from getting you to do what you need to do for your raise. It's like, it's a Ponzi scheme. But I just hated it. I was actually okay not taking a raise than to go through that process. And I don't know. If you treated me right on the way in, I don't need the raise. And because I don't need the paperwork because it's slowing me down.
Right.
So that's been my attitude. So yeah, kill it, but I understand why it's needed.
Right. So before we get into that, I just want to acknowledge you are in a new place. You are just back from playing music in front of large groups of people. Just catch us up as to what's going on.
Was in Birmingham, England, and playing with Buñuel. It's two Italians, one Frenchman, and me. And it was a supersonic festival, which is in the home of Black Sabbath. And they just had the people who put together Supersonic were largely sort of involved with the last Ozzy show with Black Sabbath in Birmingham, and there were flowers and candles and people mourning Ozzy's death. So the festival was great. We had about 4,500 people when we played, and there were a lot of cool bands we played with. And the next night we played in London, and then flew back home. Actually, it's not back; it's flew down to home, which is in Spain now. So it's close. So me playing shows in the European theater is a lot more possible, probable. And of course, the school started this week, international school for the kid in Spain, and they did an amazing amount of due diligence there. Where they're like the first day there, there's a guy who goes, "So Buñuel." So he had clearly typed in my name just to see what he could find, and all that stuff came up, which is kind of cool. He's a South African guy who was raised in Houston, Texas, and used to be a musician too. So far, so good. I'm really enjoying being here.
That's great. Well, congratulations. So let's get to the show. So the reason that we came up with this is we got an email from a listener. We always love emails from listeners. If you have ideas for us, WTF@badbossbrief.com. But this is the email that we got. I'd like to talk to you about these periodic employee reviews. To be honest, this practice is so difficult to handle psychologically that it always throws gasoline on my constant 1 foot out the door vigilance I have in any office environment I've worked in. So problem number 1, annual reviews can be tough to handle psychologically. So we're going to talk about that. They go on. I've been at this company for almost 3 years, and I have a clearly defined role as a technician/CAD drafter. I don't think I can lie and say I want to become an architect or an engineer. I don't want to advance. I want to get better at what I do right now. I have one of these coming up, and I'm already hitting my Indeed app pretty hard. So this is problem number 2. We are often expected to feign aspirations to a career plan that we may or may not want, right? What if you're like this person and you are perfectly happy at the job that you have, but your boss or the form that you have to fill out says, what do you want? What are your next 5 career steps? So that's sort of number 2. So I want to get to both of those, but first I want to step back and answer the question that you answered at the top of the hour, which is, do we kill them or keep them? And I am 100% in the kill them camp.
Yeah. Okay. Why? What do you say?
Well, I think it's lazy management. Yeah. And I think it might have been useful at one point in the past. And there might be circumstances where if it's skillfully done, but the annual review process, as I've seen it, especially in large corporations, is very formulaic.
Yeah.
It is geared towards assessing things that I don't believe are germane towards individual growth or the performance of the company. Right? So they're measuring things that aren't actually helping grow an individual, a team, or an organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, the sneaking feeling that you get and the sneaking thing that people are responding to, and that what we're really talking about is this doesn't do anything for the employee. It's not designed to help the employee, really, right? I mean, in the position that he's in, what they're saying is, if we have to pay you more, we want you to do more. And and because we have to start, it's expected that we have to pay everybody more, then they're going to have to do more stuff they don't want so we can give their job to somebody who gets less money. And that way we can work the float. And I think if the guy really wants to excel at what he does, and this is his true passion, then he should be allowed to do that. Instead of going wide, go deep. And the only company I've heard of that actually kind of tries to short circuit that is, strangely enough, Google. And a friend of mine at Google was clearly unhappy. Didn't voice it, didn't do anything. He had explained to his manager that he had a small problem with alcohol, and he needed to leave on Fridays to go to meetings or some such thing. And when he came back from, maybe a couple of weeks in rehab, went back to his job that he hated. And his boss said, "What do you want to do? This is your review now. Let's talk about." And he's like, "Well, and he mouthed some empty words about wanting to do kind of what he had been doing. And the boss just looked at him and goes, "That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in your paradise, in your fantasy world, what would you be doing here?" And he was like, "Oh, they're trying to draw me out." Because, of course, if he answers that he wants to do something other, then the manager might get offended and go, "Look, we don't need a guy who doesn't want to do his job here." But he was brave, and he said, "Really, what I want to do is video." And they said, "Great." And they gave him $20,000 to start the Google video studio. And that's what he transitioned to do that. But that's such a rare case that it wasn't a punitive, secret, scummy, punitive measure to roust out, malingerers and those with bad attitudes.
Right.
I mean, you should let people, if they want to drill down, let them drill down. But it doesn't serve the wider corporate good, I think. So.
Well, and this is a podcast called The Bad Boss Brief. So we usually talk about bad bosses. And I think that this supervisor that you're talking about is a clear exception. And I think that annual reviews are a tool that is wielded often very unskillfully by bad bosses. And so I found this, it's interesting because there's some conversation on LinkedIn about the fact that LinkedIn is posts that are done by white guys get lots of views. Posts that are done by people that look like us get fewer. And I actually saw that live because we had asked in LinkedIn a few months ago, we were doing a show and we asked for some feedback on LinkedIn. Got great comments, lots of quotes. I had a whole page of things that people had said. I put out a question, I don't know, weeks ago, asking, "Hey, tell me your annual review stories," expecting at least a dozen responses. Crickets. Nothing. Because very few people actually got to see that post. So anyway, just that's happening. But so I went and I looked up I found
let me plead the case for high tech for a second. The number 2 guy at Meta, Facebook, is a friend of mine. I haven't seen him now since I left California, but it's not out of the question that he might email me about something. And he emailed me about something, and I was like, "Oh, it's since the surgery, this has been happening, that's been happening. I can't train jiu-jitsu until October." And he's like, "Well, man, if you just stick with Christ, that should work out for you." And I was like, "Wait a minute." I've known my friend Tom now for at least 3 years, never mentioned Jesus Christ to me at all. So I said, "Hey, Tom, you remember where we first met?" And the guy said, "Yeah, at the place." I go, "What place, Tom?" And he's like, doesn't answer. And I know, Tom, the number 2 guy at Meta, has been hacked.
Wow.
His Facebook account has been hacked. So, that's just, if those guys they're not immune, we're all caught in the same kind of bit of
Well,
misery.
yes and no. However, there is, so Cindy Gallup, who is somebody that I like and follow on LinkedIn, she's been somebody who's been talking about this a lot because she has so many people that she's connected to, she can't get any more. I think it's like 30,000. And she's getting these posts that are getting like 75 views, 100 views. And she has like 40,000 people that are connected to her in some way, some very large number. And so she did an experiment where she took the exact same words and images. She posted it, and a white woman posted it, and a white guy posted it. And the numbers were dramatically different. Exact same content, exact same images, exact same. And his were substantial, even though I think he has fewer followers, and hers were negligible. So that seems like and I think.
Can you put a number to negligible? I'm curious.
He had thousands of views. She had hundreds.
Okay.
I mean, so, and it's, again, exact same copy. So I think that, and again, LinkedIn is also facing the challenge of almost everything is generated via AI, right? Yeah. So it's bots writing to bots. It's AI content against AI content. Right. I've started actually putting a little disclaimer when I post on LinkedIn that says, I wrote this.
Yes.
It came out of my brain and my keyboard.
On LinkedIn, is there a way that you can boost your post? Because this is how Facebook makes money, right?
Yes, yes. And the idea is that the organic algorithm used to, for years, just naturally you would show, again, I mean, when you and I post, and we're posting video, which is supposed to be cool clips from the Bad Boss Brief, we used to get, I don't know, 700, 800, sometimes 1,000, sometimes a couple of thousand. Now it will really be like 112.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, I digress.
Yes.
What I found was a really great article, and I'm going to recommend this guy. He has it's a blog. It's called Nonprofit AF, all one word. And his name is Nonprofit AF. His name is Vule. It's VU, new word LE. And he is in the nonprofit space and writes very well about the nonprofit space, but he has such a cogent view of the corporate world that I am often recommending his work to my corporate clients. And this one is going to go on my to be recommended list. And he talks about annual performance reviews in an article that just came out this week that says annual performance reviews suck. And he is talking about the nonprofit world and saying that the nonprofit world has been negatively impacted by some of the corporate bullshit that comes from annual reviews. But his points are really good. So I'm gonna riff on some of the ideas that he came up with and then add my own. So the idea is that annual reviews should be done away with and replaced by regular, actionable feedback sessions.
Right.
So it's not something you do once a year. It's something that you do regularly. And you have to be accurately assessing something. And so people need to have a work plan. Right? So everybody should have, whether you're an employee, a manager, where you should have a list of things that you are supposed to accomplish in a given period of time.
Right.
And they're not subjective. Right? Yeah. There should be what they call KPIs, key performance indicators. You can have KPIs for a receptionist, for a developer, for a salesperson. And it takes a moment to put those together in a thoughtful way. But you need to have a map as to what it is that you are supposed to be accomplishing. And you would be surprised at how many people do not have that. Yeah. And then the other problem is that an annual review is based on giving effective feedback. And most people in management positions have never received training on how to give feedback.
Right.
And it's astonishing to me because you will get training on how to use whatever computer systems your organization uses, right? And maybe it'll be something as small as like a YouTube video. But I have gone into so many organizations and had senior managers who have never gotten training on feedback. Never.
And I've known lots of senior managers and passively listen to them kind of complain about sessions that have teaching them the soft skills. They absolutely hate it and they don't think it's necessary. However, I've not heard a lot from the people who work for them about whether they agree. Yeah, no,
right.
It's usually assigned to me that though the guy is my friend, he's probably a lousy boss.
Right.
So
and so if you have someone like most bad bosses who doesn't think they need to learn the soft skills, has never had any training on feedback, giving feedback, who actually thinks it's not something that's important, there's no way that person can give an effective review, because a review is it is feedback. That's the whole point of it, right? Yeah. So here are some things that what I did just to kind of play with this is I thought, okay, what would a bad boss do with an annual review, right? So kind of the what not to do. So here's the bad boss approach to annual reviews. Wait until the last minute to do a review.
Yeah.
And often people are using these sophisticated software systems at large corporations. So wait until the last possible minute, give everyone feedback all in one night or on a Sunday afternoon before you go to work, preferably while drinking wine or vaping some marijuana, right? So do it all at once. Don't devote any time to it. The next one is subjectively use a random ranking system not based on any data and act like it's fact.
Oh, I'm confused. Is this what we're supposed to be doing?
This is what we're supposed to not be doing. This is the bad boss version.
Oh, okay. So, right, just to be clear, because it was sounding pretty great to me.
No, but this is what is terrible, is that these are rules. So, for example, you score a 4.6 out of 10 on approachability.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of these like very subjective metrics that don't actually, I mean, you and I talked in our last episode about how many super performers, like the real rock stars in organizations, are considered to be outliers because they are not always the warmest, fuzziest, friendliest people, nor are they focused on relationship. Those are the kind of people that are going to get low scores on some of these, on some of these subjective elements. The other thing that a bad boss might do is get feedback from coworkers and others and regurgitate it without any sort of filter and only just take the person's name off and treat them all exactly the same.
Bob says you suck.
Right?
All right,
now,
Bob.
Now, I will say, and that's what a lot of times people will be, and I've had many of these, people will be told, please give feedback on your coworker or, this person. And it is just regurgitated, right? And I'll tell you, so one of the things that I have done a number of is I will do 360s for usually CEOs.
I'm just going to ask you what you thought about 360s, because I think they're great, but go ahead.
Right. So when I do a 360, right, what I do is I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask, all very open-ended, that the stakeholders review, right? So the CEO sees it, whoever is sponsoring the 360, often with the CEO, it's the board. The board sees it. Everybody agrees these are the areas we want to explore, so I don't miss anything. And then I talk to direct reports, peers, again, if it's a CEO, board members. And what I do is I do those interviews myself. Right? I am 100% the one that does them. And what I do is I look for themes. And I do them live. I do them like this. Nothing is written down. It's me talking to a person. And I've been doing these for years. And I use a filter of my own intelligence and understanding. So if one person says, well, at the office party, she got really drunk, like sloppy drunk, I will note that. And if the other 7 or 8 people with whom I'm speaking never indicate anything along those lines, I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to say, okay, and so you look for the things that are clearly suffused with rancor and you take them with a grain of salt. You look for patterns. And then what I also do is I will ask people to give me specifics. Can you please give me an example of where he demonstrated that behavior? Right? I will ask them to tell me stories. I will also start with the positive. right? It's called appreciative inquiry, because if you go to somebody and say, tell me all the horrible things about your boss, they're only going to give you horrible things. Correct. If I start with, what's the best thing about working with this person? Correct. It just changes their perspective. Even people who hate their boss will tell me something positive because they're trying to do that. The other thing that I do in a 360 is it is 100% confidential. Nobody ever knows except for me who said what. Right? I don't tell anybody. I go through, if I do a written report, I pull out anything that's identifying. And I mean, down to the point of like language. If I'm talking to somebody who is in England, I will make sure that I'm using American English if it's an American company. And I think that delivers really great 360s, because what I can say to the CEO when I give that person their review is, here are the key themes. Here are specific examples. And if it's something that's challenging, here's a specific skill or set of behaviors that you can work on. And then I proceed to work on that with them in executive coaching. That is 180 degrees away from what passes as 360 behavior in a lot of these sort of very formulaic corporate reviews, where there is no filter, there's no weight, there's no understanding, and there's no way of adjusting for things that are obviously personal issues, jealousy, envy, frustration, whatever, all of the things that can happen in any environment where people are. So, and then the other problem is that a lot of those types of feedback will really focus on how likable a person is.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I had a boss say to me, and I've talked about this setup before when we talked about the star performers, where people were, even though I was churning out cover stories, the fact that I wasn't sitting in an office, 10 hours a day was irksome to some people in the staff. So, well, why can't I? Okay. So the very strange thing is, when I left that place, the boss was completely, and we're still friends today. So he's part of, I've had maybe 60-40 has been my breakdown. 60% of bosses I've had have been actually really good people, good bosses. He's one of them. 40% have been shitheads. So he said to me, this is really strange. I go, what's strange about it? He's like, usually, when people complain like this, it's because the person is somehow like an outlier, like they're disliked. But we all love you here. I was like, yeah, and that's why we want you around the office more. So, man, I got a book tour to do. Sorry, I can't, But I just thought that was strange, that based on whatever, indices he was using, usually it's like, if people are complaining, the person is not liked, but everybody loves this guy. And then that one person was still complaining. So he had to do something, but it's just strange. It's strange breakdown. But I actually had a couple of nights ago, sat down and thought about every single boss I had. And the breakdown was really about 60-40. So I think that's hopeful, I think. Maybe.
I think mine would be 60-40 the other way, right? Where I've had more bad bosses. And I have also been in a situation where there was, let's call it a likability gap. Right? That the job I have been brought in to do, and again, we talked about this last time, I'm brought in to fix a company or a team or change performance. And to do that, you're going to sometimes need to make choices that people dislike. And that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody isn't good at their job. So the last two things that the bad boss will do, what we don't want to do, is they will base firing, hiring, promotions, and raises on rankings that are based on this spurious data, right? Yeah. So you have all of these things, this like made up likability index, these, like unfiltered 360 comments, and then that will give people a ranking and allow the organization to fire people that shouldn't be fired, or excuse decisions that, aren't based on the person's actual merit, but just based on whatever they want. And I think that's the challenge. And then the last one is, in these annual reviews, there's often very little space for the person to say what their feedback is for the boss, or there isn't the psychological safety in the organization for the person to be actually able to give that feedback. right? And so these are all of the difficult things. And then I think I also want to get to, this is kind of talking structurally about the review. I want to get back to our listener's first comment, which is the psychological toll of unskillful reviews. Have you ever had a review that was like particularly upsetting?
Yeah, I found the letters connected to it as I was packing up my stuff to move, and it was when I was at Ziff Davis, and I got a performance award in, just pick a day, say May 1st. I had a performance award, and now as a senior editorial person, I know what was happening. The Corporate Computing was a magazine; it was failing. They were trying to position themselves for acquisition, sale, something or other. They had to thin the herd. So I get a performance award May 1st. My manager gives it to me. May 10th, my manager's manager calls me in and has a piece of paper, said, I'd like you to read this. And it essentially is setting up a scenario for to fire for cause. 10 days after the performance award. Stuff in it was made up whole cloth. Alan Kay was the manager. And I got to read my response where I went through and I said, I appreciate that you took time to write this, but it is largely fantasyful. And I went through point by point, as well as citing the May 1st performance award I got. And in the interim, they had an announcement that they were killing the company. All right. So whatever kind of behind the scenes jockeying they were trying to do to increase their financial position, the outlook of their financial position was done, gone. And he, without me even asking, he wrote a follow-on performance letter saying that due to a level of confusion on his part, he mistook something for somebody else, and blah, 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 blah. And he essentially undid his negative performance review because it was not legitimate in the first place. And two, now the company was folding the magazine. What would it hurt? He's going to do me a solid after having not done me a solid. And what's interesting about that is a later job I had after that, his resume should come across like this. Yeah, okay. I'd like to say I was a bigger man and put all that behind me, but everybody within the sound of my voice knows that's not true.
Yeah. Karma's a bitch. Karma is a bitch. Well, and I think this is one of the things you're talking about. The review was used as an excuse to try to lay you off for cause, which was obviously ridiculous. And that is, I think, I've talked to a lot of people who have had a real psychological toll, just like our listener, of bad reviews that were completely unfounded, completely unfair, and picking on something small, and it can be really, really damaging emotionally.
I've seen it happen to people who were just completely, and it becomes a very weird thing because their performance post facto suffers as a result of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You do not, at that point, you just be better, just fire the person.
Right.
But I'd like to say to anybody who's ever been in that position, whether fired, laid off, repositioned, requisitioned out, no matter what the scenario is, now at the age where I am, I can tell you honestly, I miss not a single job I've ever had, not a single one.
Right.
And I'm hard pressed to remember them all. So, in general, at this point in my life, I feel good about kind of large swathes of how I've done things and aspects of my life. But, there's going to come a time where all this stuff, this job stuff that you're agonizing over, it just becomes like a fuzzy memory. But maybe it's just me, but that is clearly the case for me.
Well, and the challenge too with the psychological aspect is that a lot of leaders, particularly people who have not been trained in the soft skills, may not be aware of the fact that different, especially if you're judging on subjective items.
Right.
If you're dealing with someone who is neurodivergent, if you are dealing with someone who is from a different culture, they may have different, they uses the example of eye contact. Right. If someone is feeling like, well, that person doesn't look me in the eye, so they're not assertive enough, and I'm going to mark them down for not being assertive enough. Well, if they are neurodivergent, if they come from a culture where that's considered to be rude or confrontational, there's nuances of that. And I've also seen people who have gotten really bad reviews when they have returned from maternity leave. It often happens to women, parental leave, FMLA leave. Like, well, you weren't around. So it's like, I wasn't around because I brought a human into the world and had
sleazy and illegal. So,
right. But it does happen. So we're almost out of time, but I just want to have a little recap here. So again, it's Vu Le Nonprofit AF is a great article. 3 things, if you can impact annual reviews, like you're a manager or a good boss, do these things. Have a clear, concise work plan for everybody who works for you so they know what they're being measured against. If they want it, work with them on a career path. If they don't, like you said earlier, let them go deep and stay where they are and continue to build their skills. Have regularly scheduled one-on-ones where ideally at least once a quarter. Don't wait until the end of the year, and really focus on giving and receiving feedback and making sure that everyone that works in your team has training and expertise on how to give and receive feedback.
Yep.
So there we go. We have a knowledge-packed session today.
There you go. You can take that, walk back to your job and say, they told me to do this.
which we did. So if you, like our listener, have other ideas, as you can tell, we'd love to respond to what it is that you want us to talk about. WTF@badbossbrief.com. And we will be back at you in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Adios.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bad Boss Brief podcast with your hosts, Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Peirolo. You can check out more of their work by visiting consigliera.substack.com for Stephanie and eugenesrobinson.substack.com for Eugene. You can also find Eugene at Mr. Sleep 3, that's number 3, on Instagram. Reach out with your questions, concerns, work case situations, or suggestions to us at WTF@badbossbrief.com. We personally answer every submission. Be sure to join us at badbossbrief.substack.com every other Wednesday for episodes of Bad Boss Brief so you can gain further insights into your workplace environments. Until next time, don't be an asshole at work.